I call Katrina Shanks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As the Minister mentioned earlier, the main purpose of the Regulatory Standards Bill is to improve the quality of regulation in New Zealand. A key part of this government's plan for strong economic growth is cutting red tape and regulations. The simple fact is that New Zealand has a problem with excessive regulation. These regulations impose real costs on our businesses and unnecessary burdens on individuals. We want to make it easier for New Zealand companies to do business, to lift productivity, to create jobs, to boost incomes, to improve living standards, to provide the world-class public services that our Kiwi families deserve. National believes that better regulation and less regulation is essential to help New Zealand to become more internationally competitive and a more attractive place to live and do business. We recognise that in order to allow our businesses to move ahead, to grow, to develop, we need to address and remove, where possible, barriers to this growth. The Regulatory Standards Bill attempts to provide greater transparency and accountability for the quality of laws and regulations in New Zealand. The bill has its origins in a private member's bill, then known as the Regulatory Responsibility Bill, that Parliament's Commerce Committee examined in 2008. The committee recommended that the members' bill not be passed, but that the government establish a high-level expert task force to consider options for improving regulatory review and decision-making processes. The current Regulatory Standards Bill is the result of the work of this task force. As my colleagues have mentioned, the Regulatory Standards Bill would require all proposed new laws and regulations to be assessed against a core set of accepted regulatory principles based on existing, well-established guidelines. This is about improving the quality of regulation in New Zealand. The bill aims to increase the transparency of regulation making and the accountability of regulation makers. In essence, the bill has three components. Firstly, it provides a benchmark for good regulation through a set of regulatory principles that all regulation should comply with. Secondly, it provides transparency by requiring those proposing and creating regulation to certify whether the regulation is compatible with the principles. And thirdly, it provides monitoring of the certification process. We know that every New Zealander is affected by regulation in a number of ways. Some regulation is important. It helps us live safer lives, get treated fairly, protect and manage our environment, have a competitive and efficient economy, and much more. However, regulation also has costs and can have unintended effects. That is why improving the quality of regulation is a priority for this government. We believe that better regulation and less regulation is essential to assist New Zealand to become more internationally competitive and a more attractive place to live and do business. We are committed to introducing new regulation only when we are satisfied that it is required, reasonable and robust. We will review existing regulation in order to identify and remove requirements that are unnecessary, ineffective or excessively costly. In fact, since being elected, the National-led government has begun a program of reviews of the effectiveness of important regulatory regimes, particularly those that have a significant impact on productivity. We've simplified employment law. National's employment law package encourages employers to hire new staff, reduces compliance costs and gives greater choice around holidays. The voluntary 90-day trial has created 13,000 jobs in small and medium-sized businesses. We've extended this to all employers. We've simplified the Resource Management Act, balancing our economic opportunities with our environmental responsibilities. We've simplified building regulations. Our Better Building Blueprint is making it easier and cheaper to build good quality homes and buildings. We're amending the Building Act to encourage a build right first time approach, keeping builders accountable and streamlining the consent process to make it cheaper for homeowners. Better and less regulation has and will continue to make New Zealand more productive and prosperous. And I look forward to this bill coming to the Commerce Select Committee so we can discuss how the Regulatory Standards Bill can improve the quality of regulation in New Zealand. Thank you, Mr Speaker.